Tutu Agyare, who is our guest for the 12th edition of the MTN Business World Executive Breakfast, is the founder and managing partner of Nubuke Investments. Nubuke was founded in 2007. It's an asset management firm whose interest lies in the Pan-African equities and fixed income products. The firm invests in a diverse range of investment products encompassing equities, fixed income, and alternative investments. Nubuke was established to offer investors a diverse platform to access the dynamic economic growth and the structural changes occurring in key capital markets across the African continent. They focus exclusively on investments throughout the African continent across a broad array of opportunities, including public equity, government and corporate fixed income, securities, and currencies. Named as one of the 100 most influential Africans for the year 2013 by New African magazine, Tutu made history not only as the first African, but as the first black trader on the floor of the London Stock Exchange. He has a BSc in mathematics and computing from the University of Ghana. He has deep insights into investment in Africa and is a world-renowned speaker at international business conferences. Ladies and gentlemen, the 12th edition of the MTN Business World Breakfast Meeting is happy to introduce Tutu Agyare. I think you can do better. Put your hands together for him again.
Thank you.
It is such a pleasure having you. Good morning.
Good morning.
How does it feel hearing all that about yourself?
I prefer reading about it than hearing about it, I must admit. A little embarrassing. The one thing I will say is that none of it would have been possible without a very solid and incredibly strong grounding in an educational establishment in Ghana. I think when we were growing up, those who left to go and get educated abroad were those who couldn't hack it over here. And so between University Primary, Ashimota School, and University of Ghana, I feel very privileged to have taken the best that these countries had to offer. And that's one of the reasons I'm here today. I'm just trying to give something back.
How do you explain your work to your son? I'm sure now he's old enough to understand. I have an 8-month-old son, and it's difficult to explain to him what I do. How do you explain to somebody your work? Very simple, basic. What do you do?
I mean, I have a number of jobs. I mean, the day job which drives everything that I do is the investment company. And essentially what we do is we raise money from international investors and we invest it across the African continent within a regulated structure which is regulated by the UK regulatory authorities. So based upon our view on where value lies across the continent, we try and convince investors that we are one of many platforms that they should consider when it comes to taking advantage of what is, I guess, now clearly seen as an enormous opportunity across the continent of Africa. We sit at one end of the spectrum, so we only tend to invest in publicly listed securities, government-issued securities. We don't do private equity. We don't own things. We don't run things. We don't buy things off people. We tend to invest in exchanges. And we spread the risk across the continent. So at the moment, we have investments in somewhere in the region of 17 different African countries, and we have investments in about 12 different African sectors in Africa.
So that's your day job?
That's the day job.
So what do you do at night?
So, I mean, the night job, I obviously non-executive director for Tullow Oil. So yet again, another Pan-African company. It has investments in 17 different African countries. And it just gives you a perspective. You know, they benefit from my experience and relationships across the continent. I benefit from understanding a lot more the oil and gas industry. Have a very strong interest in the arts. I've been an art collector for a number of years. So we have a foundation here in Ghana, Nubuke Foundation, which is focused on promoting arts and culture in Ghana it's primarily focused on children. So it's a great facility in East Legon. Please go there if you want to learn more about your own country, because one of the things that's very difficult to do is there are very few places where you can go to get access to the facts about our own history and culture. And there are very few places that store this information collate it in a format that's easy to access. And for me, one of the things that's always held me in good stead is I know who I am, and I know where I'm from, and I know the successes, I know my history, so I know the successes that have been afforded to the people like me. So when I'm in a different environment, I don't get fazed because I know who I'm from. I don't get fazed by people's perception of me. Somebody has an issue with who I am, let them go and deal with it because I know who I am and where I'm from. And it's all about knowing and understanding my own history and my own culture.
Exciting. The first time I heard of Nubuke was actually to do with poetry. Yeah. And so I was surprised to know that you're the same person. So it's a good place at East Legon, and I urge you to visit. Yes. But you mentioned in your answer that you don't run companies. When you put money into a company, you don't necessarily take it over and run it. Any particular reason for that? Why that approach?
It's our skill set. I mean, it plays to our skills. Investing in companies and taking over companies and running them demands a different skill set. And it's not one that we have acquired through my career, but going to visit companies, sitting down with companies, understanding their business plans, understanding their ability to execute, understanding how they're going to create value for shareholders like myself, and then being able to make an investment decision on that basis is my skill set. And so that's essentially why we don't do that. You just need a different skill set, a different time frame, and that we don't have, so we don't do it.
But what kind of businesses do you look at? What specific sectors are attractive to some of your clients?
I think that telecoms, MTN, we have investments in a number of telecommunications companies across Africa. I think that the intersection between telecommunications as we've known it and banking as it's developing is allowing the telecommunications companies and even the financial institutions, the lines between the two get blurred. And I don't think anybody quite knows exactly where we end up. But if you look at models that are developing in some of the emerging countries, M-Pesa, Safaricom, everybody's heard about that. And essentially you use your mobile phone essentially as a bank card, a bank account, an identification. And at the moment in Kenya, 10% of the total GDP goes through their system. There are more people in Kenya using mobile phones to do banking transactions than in the US. And the same model and development of the model in Kenya is being replicated in other countries. In Ghana, it's a slightly different model because in Kenya, if you do a transaction below a certain amount of money, it's not regulated by the financial institution. Whereas here, the model is slightly different. And so we're yet to see a dominant player develop. It might be MTN, it might be Airtel, it might be Vodafone, we don't know yet. But in other countries, there tends to be a dominant player who's beginning to take advantage of that. And so as this develops and we follow trends, one of the big trends that exists is because the populations the average age of the population is so low. In Ghana, according to the 2010 census, the median age in this country is 21.1. Young people are not afraid of technology. And so training them to use the mobile phone to make payments is not an issue. And so they're more likely to take it up than in an aging economy. So we think that telecoms is an incredibly exciting space.
And I get what you're saying, but you're African. There is such a thing as bad FDI, and there's such a thing as good FDI. Some people believe that some people bring money, they make as much and as quickly as they can, and they ship everything back. But there's good FDI. They may reinvest their profits here. They may focus on impact industries, which would be health, education. Do you not worry at all about balancing such a thing? Or for the model you run, it's simply a question of your investor making a return, a pecuniary return?
For the fund that we run, it's about returns. There are a lot of things that we do outside of the fund from an investment. As I said, I have a day job and I have lots of night jobs. For example, at the moment with some friends here in Ghana, we're in the process of setting up a farm. And one of the extraordinary opportunities and untapped opportunities in this country is in the agricultural space. If you look at the amount of food that is being consumed in this country, that is being imported, which could be grown in this country, it boggles my mind that the average Ghanaian wants to wear a suit and a tie and sit in a bank and doesn't want to go back to the land to take advantage of this. I mean, $500 million worth of rice is being imported every year. And it doesn't take too much It takes a lot of discipline. It takes having to live outside of the city. But there are good opportunities with a lot of help available to set up farms which will generate you the same sort of returns as if you were working in a bank. The people who import will buy the rice off you. The international community will help you with your agronomy. They'll help you with your structure. And I just don't understand why people are. So rather than sit around and try and figure it out, guess what? We're going to do it ourselves. If you look at the imports of ethanol, this country is importing, the alcohol industry is importing $100, $150 million a year worth of ethanol. You get that from cassava. Cassava is not particularly difficult to grow. You need a discipline, but there's an enormous opportunity there. And recently, if you see, Casapreco just bought into Caltech, which is, I guess, one of the most successful, one of the most organized cassava grower, because Casapreco itself imports $80 million worth of ethanol a year. Who's knocking on the door to say, I want to give you cassava? 80% of the vegetables in this hotel are imported. And yet nobody is out there focused on growing vegetables.
So your decision is to go in yourself instead of throw money at people who are already in it. I'm asking this because only 4.8% of lending in Ghana goes to the agricultural sector. I'm talking about domestic banks. So the sector itself is not attractive to new money. It's not attractive to people as a profession. How come we are not throwing money at agriculture and we're focusing on entering ourselves like you are? What's missing with the agricultural sector as it is now?
Well, I mean, I think that, lending will take place where the bank thinks it's going to get a return. And I think if you speak to the banks, you'll find that in a lot of instances, the losses from agriculture tend to be far higher than almost any other sector. The flip side of that is that the most successful domestic sector we have in this country is cocoa. And cocoa, 85% of cocoa is grown by smallholders, 5 acres or less. Why does cocoa work? Cocoa works for a number of reasons. The standardization of seed. So if you buy a seedling from New Tafo, and sorry, Mr. Mwabing is in the crowd.
For those of you who know Prince Kofi Mwabing, Tafo Golf,
yes,
get the connection.
And for those of you who haven't been up there, I go up there to play golf with him. But if you haven't been up to the Cocoa Research Institute, I thoroughly recommend going for the tour, because you can buy the seedling from the Cocoa Research Institute, which gives you a relatively guaranteed yield within a certain time frame. You get help with spraying, you get help with fertilizer, you get advice on where to plant, and more importantly, the government is a guaranteed off-taker. And so there's certainty of return from investment, which is why you get people going into cocoa. And the same should be happening I think the same should be happening for certain key industries. The government has talked about, getting more involved in rice. And so the reason we're getting into it is because we're yet to come across a vehicle which will allow us to do it in the way that we'd like. So guess what? Let's start ourselves. And if you set up a 1,000-hectare farm to produce 20,000 tons of rice in 5 years, you employ about 2,000 people. The dependency is 5 to 1. And guess what? Ghana is importing 700,000 tons of rice a year, growing at 7% a year. You could have 20, 30 farms with 1,000 hectares, which is about 5 square kilometers, and you still wouldn't meet the demand. You would employ, and with dependencies, close to 500,000 people. So that's the sort of thing that we're looking at.
But some people blame adventurous people who do derivatives for some of the problems our world economy faced. What's your approach? What advice do you have for those who manage banking in Ghana? Is it an area we should seriously think of developing, the derivatives market, or we should leave that for those of you in London and New York and Tokyo to be doing?
The first law of investments is never make an investment, especially in capital markets, if you can't afford to lose the money. And secondly, never invest in something that you cannot explain in words of one syllable to your son. If you don't understand it, don't do it. The world of derivatives is not particularly challenging, but has a lot of pitfalls. And there are a lot of what I call snake oil salesmen, people who promise you the earth and cannot deliver, or risk that you're taking that you don't understand. So until we have the expertise to be able to regulate and manage, the issue of the financial crisis was not necessarily the products. It was the regulation around the products that allowed their misuse. And traders are like children. If you give them a lot of latitude, they'll take up as much latitude as you give them.
Did you actually say that?
Yes. You know,
traders are like children.
Yes. So if you don't regulate them, you don't restrict them tightly, they will take as much liberty as they want. So I absolutely believe that derivatives have a place within our financial markets. We have to ensure that we have the skill set to regulate it appropriately. A lot of people, when you mention hedging, will go back as far back as Ashanti Goldfields. And, you know, many of us in the room here were shareholders at that time when, you know, a national asset went elsewhere. But it wasn't that the derivatives were bad. It was that the regulatory environment around them allowed for what happened to happen. So I cut my teeth on derivatives, fully understand them, but unless we are 100% comfortable with the regulatory environment, we shouldn't go near them. Ghana positions itself as the gateway to West Africa, and my Nigerian friends tell me that they are the destination. So I mean, Ghana's going through some very challenging times, and interestingly, probably shouldn't say this, but there's a research report out this morning which has a year-end target for the cedi to the dollar of 3.7 for 2015. Wow. We just had a National Economic Forum, and we've had a 22-point plan that has come out of that. The only thing I'd like to say about that with all plans, the most important thing for me, and the most important thing that international investors want to see, is who is going to do what by when. The challenges that are perceived about Ghana at the moment surround the fact that we have a cost line and a revenue line. Mm-hmm. The revenue line is being impacted by the falling cedi, by cocoa receipts not being as high as they are. Ashanti Gold are closing down Obuasi, the gold receipts are not as high as they are. Tax receipts are not as high as they are. So on the revenue line, we're not making as much as we used to make. I think what people are waiting to see is what the reaction is going to be, or the response is going to be on the cost line. Because you either borrow more to cover your revenue shortfall, or you cut your costs accordingly.
A lot of people are worried about the Nigerian influence in Ghana. Some people say they are into too many important sectors. Others worry that they are into leisure and not investing. How should Ghana approach the Nigeria question as far as leveraging on the advantages this big neighbor has to become a more successful economy?
I think that there are a number of ways that we can work a lot closer with Nigeria, and you know, the president is obviously the chairman of ECOWAS and such. He has the ability to interact a lot more. The president of Nigeria is a little distracted at the moment with a very big problem he has on their hand, which could be spreading. But at the same time, our fortunes are intertwined. If we could get the contracted amount of gas down the West Africa gas pipeline, that alone would save us $2 million a day, $500 million, $750 million a year, massively improves our balance sheet. So there's a relationship there that needs to be worked on. At the moment, the Nigerians are sometimes perceived to just be using here as a leisure destination. But trust me, they are really looking for investment opportunities. Nigeria imports 2,000 tons of salt a year from Brazil. We have extraordinary salt flats which are being hugely underutilized. Why don't we go and look for Nigerians to partner with to get around the issues of importing salt into this country? Nigeria is doing extraordinary things with the agricultural development sector. And if anybody hasn't read the development plan for Nigeria's agriculture, I absolutely, absolutely insist that you do so. Because they have registered 13 million farmers. Their food import bill in 2013 was down on the year. They've doubled the amount of rice they're producing because they have a cohesive, integrated plan for improving import substitution. So I do think that there are partnerships available. Nigeria has a very, very developed oil services industry. They've had oil for 60 years. Other lessons we can learn there about developing ports, about improving our infrastructure. So I think there's a collaborative element to working with Nigeria. But my statement was, if we don't leverage the relationship, we end up in a situation where they're just coming here to buy holiday homes, to build hotels, to spend their weekends, as opposed to treating us as a very serious investment destination. And we have to be laser-like focused on that.
And we'll take maybe a couple of questions. You are a mathematician, so you can handle complexity.
My name is Jojo Banaman from Stanchart. My question relates to investing in Africa, considering the challenges in the currency depreciation. If you look at Zambia, if you look at South Africa, if you look at Ghana. How do you look at returns to your investors from a global point of view in that sense?
My name is Francis. I was just wondering what you thought about startups in Ghana, especially young startups, young entrepreneurs who are trying to do something in Ghana, what you think their opportunities are as well.
As far as the currencies are concerned, we run a hedge fund. So we can benefit from markets going up and markets going down and currencies going up and currencies going down. So the extent to which we are worried about a currency, we can sell the currency short to benefit from it dropping, or we just exit investments. So in two of the currencies you talked, two out of the three currencies you talked about, in one of them we were shorted, so we just bought it back. And in the other one we exited all of our investments, and we only recently went back in because we think that where the current interest rates levels are, where the currency is today, we're getting paid to hold the currency. So we're actively looking at that. And you know my partner, Peter Enti, he specializes in currencies and fixed income. He couldn't be here today because he's with Kabaruka in Kigali. But Peter used to run fixed income and FX for Standard Chartered for Africa. And he's well known to many people here, but that's what he specializes in. As far as startups are concerned, I'm absolutely passionate about startups. And I wish that there was more VC money available in country to take advantage of that. I do think that sometimes our approach from the people who own the purse strings is very old world, and because they don't understand it, they won't invest in it. And there was but there's some very successful companies that we have. We have Rancard, who are in the room today, and they have a very successful telecoms business. We have Bright Simmons business, which is involved in the medical space, which is a very successful business. We recently passed, actually I shouldn't say passed, we recently got turned down on making an investment in a phenomenal little company which has started up here called Express Pay, which is an app you bring on your iPad, and means that for those of you who run around sticking your hand out the window at the traffic lights buying credit, you now no longer have to do that. You can just sit on your iPad, press a button, and automatically loads up your phone with credits. And so I'm absolutely passionate about it. I think that is the next generation. I think that in the realm of IT, which we haven't really talked about, things like e-health, things like payment systems are incredibly important. But I wish there was more money available, and I wish that, maybe it's a plea to the government to say, put $5 or $10 million aside and back 20, 30, 40, 50 of these companies. All you need to do is get lucky once, and you end up with $1 billion return. And that, I think, is incredibly important.
My question is about education and your children, and related to other people in this room, and I'm sure elsewhere, who are very influential, but are all taking their children outside of Ghana for university education. Such influential people like you, I think, is it possible that you guys would meet and work out something to change the educational system we have in Ghana, not necessarily formally, but even informally? Because I'm thinking, if we have a radio program across every single radio station that says we're going to have an educational program for an hour at the same time, people will start, changing their outlook and the way they see things, because the education we have right now is not fit for purpose, like you're saying.
There's a revolution going on in the educational world, and MWC's massive online courses is a huge enabler for, I guess, giving people a high quality education without leaving your own country. And these are online courses that you can actually go to Harvard site. If they hold a course, you can pick it, and over a course of a month or 2 or 3, you can actually take a course sitting in your living room. And there's a whole range of courses that are available from some of the best universities in the world. Technology is becoming a leveler, and not just for education. Some people talk about, well, how do I go online when I don't even have power? How can I go online? But there are other ways of delivering education. I still believe that there is a role to be played in simple technology, accepting the fact that not everybody is going to have power everywhere. Well, why don't we just record teachers teaching classes and then put them into DVDs and send them to the villages whose children are still sitting under trees. You know, the one thing that every village has in this country is has a television, because everybody watches the sport. So you can put stuff on DVDs and give them a DVD player and let them watch these things at any time they like. There are lots of ways of delivering a high quality education. There is a concern that the teachers are not trained enough to be able to deliver a high quality education. You can intermediate them, but you have to take a step back, as I said before. What are you solving for? If you're trying to deliver a high quality education to your children, you don't necessarily have to use the traditional conduits. You can start all over again. And those debates actually are probably held by people who are far younger than you or I, because the way my children learn, you know, my son learns with music on, headphones on, DVD in the background, is completely different from the way I did. So, but I do think that there are solutions in other countries which are working incredibly well, which we need to adopt over here if we wish to take advantage of the fact that we're now a middle-income economy. We have brains and institutions available, but more importantly, if you look at the mobile revolution and the way it transformed the fixed line revolution, there are a number of other opportunities that we should be taking advantage of, and I don't think we're quite yet there.
Just to jump on your answer to the lady's question about the tablet and ICT, we have Rankard, we have M-Pedigree, successful startups in technology. What advice would you give to some of those people? Because I meet a lot of young people, they're developing apps, they're trying to do things in the technology space. What advice do you have for them if they really want to succeed, or even create a business to the point where somebody from the West or wherever would want to put money in to scale them up? What are some of the key questions they should ask themselves as they develop these apps or try and solve traffic problems and do these basic things on the tablet?
The law on investment remains the same wherever you are. Somebody will give you money if you can give them a return that meets their requirements. People, you know, some people will give you money because they just have money to give, and they'll throw money at it and hopefully they make. So there are a lot of people running around with apps that they're developing which have no commercial viability. There are a lot of people who are unrealistic about their expectations about what the returns are for the person giving you the money. And to me, that's the most important thing. I will always look at a business, and most people will always look at a business if they think that they can make more money than they're investing or they get an appropriate return. So that to me is the key. What does your business plan look like? And a business plan doesn't get the same level of investment as a business. So the fact that you have a business plan or a great idea, you know, go to App Store, you know, 99.9% of those apps never make any money. So that's the sort of success rate you're looking at. If you talk to a venture capitalist company here, they do 1 in 100 investments. So there isn't anywhere as much money as there is in the US, so you can't expect to get a US valuation. But more importantly, you know, until you have a viable business, 99% of the time you're going to have to raise your money from friends and family and people who believe in you. When you have a viable business with cash flows, that's where there's money available.
Final question, why golf? I've been trying to wrap my mind around how you can find pleasure in hitting a ball and walking a kilometer to hit it again, and walk a kilometer and hit it again. And I mean, help me out.
I mean, I'm a big fan of golf for a number of reasons. One is it's you against the elements, and every time you go up to hit a golf ball, it's the same again. The fact that you hit a really good shot before doesn't mean you're going to hit a really good shot again, so it focuses the mind. And secondly, it is the sport of business. With my other hat on, which is Talo, you know, we are in the process of helping to develop the Achimota Golf Course into hopefully what will become one of the great meeting places for not just local investors, but for international investors to come and meet. Because if you tell people we've got a great golf course, it'll be the only PGA rated golf course in the whole of West Africa, you know, you've already got tons of people lining up to come and play it. And it's a place for business. And so for me, you know, you are able to get a measure of a person if you spend 4 hours with them on a golf course, you watch how they hit the ball, you have an opportunity to talk with them and build relationships. So, but it's a very personal thing.
A round of applause for our guest, Tutu Agyare. On behalf of Business World Magazine, MTN, and all our supporting partners, a big thank you for being part of the program. My name is Bernard Avele. See you at the 13th edition of the MTN Business World Executive Breakfast. Good morning.